The 3D era was a phenomenon in video games which many franchises and companies had to go through. Dragon Ball was not the exception. A developer called Toast aimed to create the first Dragon Ball game in history with 3D graphics. That event happened on the PlayStation console. On February 1st, 1997, we would have the arrival of Dragon Ball Final Bout. As I know that many of you may disagree with me after seeing the title of the video, we will go directly to review this game. 3 months after the conclusion of GT on broadcast, this game was released as the first Dragon Ball game in history to have completely polygonal graphics, just as the industry and players were expecting, maybe indirectly. Although the jump from 2D to 3D didn't always mean that there was going to be an improvement, here in Final Bout there was a lot of speculation to see what kind of changes in the game feeling this new approach would bring. The result was not very satisfactory. Final Bout receives you with very simple game modes and options. You have the battle mode against the CPU, where you will fight the crucial combats for the story in quotes that they offer us to develop, being Baby Vegeta Golden Great Ape, the final boss. As you can note, this is still a fighting game that tries to transport the mechanics of past games in 2D format and retain the factor that made it addictive to play. However, the generational leap seemed to have been too much for the developers. This arcade mode works as a first approach to the controls, the characters, the story, to virtually everything from moment 1. And this is not necessarily good. It turns out that if you had already come from playing games like Super Butoden, you could have a slight idea of how the commands work, or at least intuitively discover how to make special attacks. But for casual players who would come for the first time to experiment with this type of games, two bad things would happen. First, you would get lost extremely easy and you would get bored right away, unless you are a big fan of the Dragon Ball universe and you're excited to see the characters in 3D models for the first time. And second, it leaves a very bad image of what Dragon Ball games or anime in general are with this first impression. This game is one of the first examples of why this genre has the current reputation. Let's see, I know many here grew up with this game. In fact, you will know that this was the first game I ever played in my life, or at least that I remember. And even though for the great majority Final Bout means a lot for their childhood, and they consider it one of the most important classics of their early years on PlayStation, having played it again for this video, I'm sorry but I can't agree with that statement. The only thing I can acknowledge it is that it was the first attempt to do a game with polygonal graphics, and also because its soundtrack and intro are very well done. It awakens a lot of feelings. I can't deny that it's very good, but that's it. The rest of everything that condenses this game in its gameplay, graphic quality, frame rate, narrative, learning curve, innovation, everything is very weak, not to say mediocre. I have read many people who oppose these statements, saying that it's not fair to judge this game by today's standards because it would be unplayable. And they're right, it is unplayable, but both in the present and in the time in which it came out 26 years ago. I'm not ranking the game with today's standards, that would be absurd. I'm doing it taking into account the quality standards of that time, the period of Super Mario 64, the period of Ocarina of Time, the same as the first Tekken, a game that shares its same genre and being from the same period exceeds but by miles what is Final Bout. Even making this comparison, there will be people who think that it's still unfair because, and I quote, they're not recognized developers, they don't have that much budget to make such a good game. I'm one of those who think that we have to leave that mentality that a game, because it's an anime, must already have an established predetermined quality limit just because it's an anime. That's wrong. That is predisposing and businessing the development houses and the publishers of these games to make them believe that they're doing the best they could, when the results of their games show that is not so. Just because a game is from an anime should not be taken lightly. It should be challenged and imposed, not a spectacularity of production, but passion, commitment. Look at indie games like Cave Story or Celeste, games that without having great financial muscle, delivery projects that have something new to say that are polished to the bone. My question is, why can't anime games do the same? Just for having that shield created by the community to say, it's from an anime, you can't ask for a lot, you are ungrateful, do it yourself if you know so much. No, my friend, I'm not the one who has to know how to make a video game. That's why they charge us for it. They charge for their work, which is fair, because we want to experience those products that we would never dream of being able to create. The problem is that they're not cheap products at all, right? So tell me, is it that hard for you to value the money you are giving to that company? That company that you are giving your trust and then pays you with things like this? And not because I want to be the one who always speaks the truth, but because there are games in the same period that with much less resources deliver much more than these games have ever given. I don't want to divert too much from the topic. Final Bout is a product excessively defended by nostalgia and coming from someone who has many times been moved by it. This game brings a pretty decent number of characters from both Dragon Ball Z and GT. This Goku in different phases, adult Trunks, Pan, Vegito, etc. The visual section, to be the first attempt at 3D graphics, is not bad, but sometimes you can lose the faces of the characters, and I think they could have made much more fluid movements. Because if there's something that made me tired about this title, it was his poor agility in combat. It's excessively rude, and if you don't believe me, I invite you to play it again. Download an emulator. Believe me, it requires almost nothing from you in terms of components on PC, and you will see that playing this is simply awful. Normal hits only have one hit, being the punch and the kick. You can launch Ki Blast, charge, cover, jump, and crouch. Then we have the special moves. Yes, they are unique to each character. We have the Kamehameha, the Spirit Bomb, the Final Flash. The vast majority of the series' iconic techniques are here. Playing with a friend is the game mode where Final Bout shines the most, leaving the technical section and enjoying the 3D graphics of the characters that we all wanted to see when we were children. The game has beam struggle mechanics, a factor that, if it's absent in every Dragon Ball game, immediately makes the fans on the defensive, but here it is well implemented. You can dodge them, repel them, and so on. There are also rush attacks that can be longer if the corresponding commands are pressed. These were called Meteor. But as I said before, all this had to be inquired by the player, thanks to the introduction system to the game that is practically not existent. Again, if the game improved its aspect of agility in motion, believe me, it would win a lot of points, but many seconds can be spent while you try to accommodate the character so that it can perform the blows at the same height level as the rival. It's very frustrating, and it's not because you don't know how to play, it's not correct for characters to move that way in a fighting game. Also, the game seems late to react to everything you press on it, as if you have to give the game advantage to react. I understand that the capabilities of the PS1 were not something from the other world, but you are seriously telling me that I can do this type of actions in real time in Mega Man X5, and here it looks like everyone has brick blocks on their feet? If one thing is true, is that someone had to take the first step. Someone in the industry had to trip so that those who came after already had foundations and references with which to guide them, giving paths to more important advances, more relevant for the genre to advance. Even if the industry remained bad, good things came out of others' mistakes. And at the same time, we are not going to deny that, the game would leave a mark that will be remembered by many lovers of the genre with a lot of heart. Let me know in the comments what you think about Dragon Ball Final Bout. Do you agree with me? Did you remember it better or worse? I'll be reading you. Little by little, we are covering all of the most relevant games that I have been asked to review, at least in the area of Dragon Ball. Stay tuned for the next chapters because there's still a lot to go through. Thank you very much for watching, guys. That was all for today, and I'll be watching you in the next video. Take care and see ya.